Happy Halloween, my little ponies. On this cold and stormy night, I, Markida, is going to do a reaction. 28 planks later, the aftermath. My Little Pony, Grimdark, reading. 22 minutes and 52 seconds. Let's get this reaction started. In 3, 2, 1, go. Got that message of years. Some disturbing content. Oh gosh.
It all started with a simple cough.
Oh shit, hello.
Rainbow Dash was charged with community service for her reckless acts against Ponyville and all of its inhabitants.
Okay.
She had to clean up every single joke cookie that had been dropped during Pinkie's prank, which she found fair, because even she agreed that her behavior was reckless and that she had gone too far.
Biological warfare.
Her only tool to clean up the cookies was a simple aluminum stick with a metal spike on the end of it. She couldn't even use her hooves. The first day was a cloudy day when she arrived just outside of the Sweetapple Acres barn house.
Right.
Along the way to the barn house, she had noticed the massive amounts of cookies she would have to clean up, and since she couldn't use her hooves, she couldn't just pick up the cookies along the way to Sweetapple Acres. She knew it was part of her punishment, but seriously, did insult have to be added to her injury? She sighed as she passed the gateway to Sweetapple Acres. Applejack was waiting for her just outside of the barn, where she would be watching Rainbow Dash, making sure she did her job the right way. Applejack knew how Rainbow Dash was when it came to doing a job, and she wasn't going to get off easy.
What? Did you seriously think the No Pony would be watching you to make sure you did things right?
Stated Applejack with a chuckle. Rainbow Dash expressed an annoyed look, following a small cough, as she walked into the barn, guided by Applejack, pointing her hoof into the barn. She had not realized how many joke cookies had been consumed by Rarity, Applejack, and the CMC, until Celestia's sun shone upon the inside of the barn. Rainbow ink covered the barn floor in the areas where Rarity, Applejack, and the CMC had stood the night before, along with tons of cookie crumbs. Rainbow Dash sighed as she stuck the metal spike into the very first cookie. Applejack stood outside of the barn, leaning against the barn entrance with a single piece of hay in her mouth. Cookie after cookie was picked up, as Rainbow Dash caught a sniff of something among the barn. She figured it was just part of the natural smell of the barn, and put it aside quickly, continuing to peck at the cookie remains. The longer she continued her duties, though, the more she could smell the same odor. The smell wasn't putrid, but almost the smell of a newly opened package, something you normally wouldn't smell in a barn. Barns would normally smell like 3 things: barn animals, alfalfa, and barnwood. This smell was strange, and immediately made Rainbow question where the smell was coming from. Where could it be coming from?
I don't know.
This barn was old, and the scent was of something new.
Hey, Applejack, do you smell that?
Asked Rainbow Dash. Applejack lifted her hat from her eyes and took a few good sniffs.
The only thing I smell is some pony trying to get out of working,
replied Applejack in a stern voice.
No, I'm serious. I swear I'm not making this up, AJ.
Stated Rainbow Dash. Applejack did not respond and just lowered her head over her eyes once more. Rainbow Dash knew she wasn't going to get anywhere with Applejack, so she returned to her labor, attempting to ignore the smell. It was hard to ignore. The smell had become obvious and even caused Rainbow Dash to cough massively. It was no small cough, but a scary one. The longer she remained in the barn, the more the smell grew, making it hard for her to work. She wanted to say something, but that tactic had already fell flat on its face. She had only been in the barn for less than 5 minutes, and already she was getting a severe headache, and her stomach was starting to feel upset. Her vision had grown blurry from the strange smell as well, causing her eyes to water. and immediately she knew that it wasn't from the hay because she never had allergies. Her stomach grew more upset and even had started to cough again, but this time the severity of the cough had increased tenfold. Something was definitely wrong with her, and even Applejack could see something was wrong.
Rainbow, are you okay?
Asked Applejack in a concerned tone.
Does she sound okay,
Before Rainbow
Applejack?
Dash even had a chance to respond, she dashed out of the barn. It was clear that she was in a hurry, but she didn't go far, only to the side of the barn. On the side of the barn, the Pegasus vomited protrusively on the ground. It wasn't just one full thrust of vomit, but 5 violent thrusts, as the Pegasus started to cry from the burning in her throat. Applejack rounded the corner, noticing her friend in pain and agony. The sight frightened Applejack as a cold sweat formed upon her forehead. Rainbow Dash coughed massively as she planted her flank on the ground and continued to cry. Applejack didn't know what to do, because she had never seen somebody this sick before. Applebloom had been sick with the flu before, but it was never this bad. What could have possibly caused it? It was clear Rainbow Dash wasn't faking this. Without a doubt, this was real.
Rainbow, are you okay?
Asked Applejack, keeping her distance. Rainbow did not answer, as she slowly turned her head toward Applejack. Rainbow Dash's face was as pale as a ghost. Her tears were not tears, but blood drops, and the content that Rainbow had vomited was nothing but a pure, massive puddle of what looked like blood. Applejack jumped back from the sight of what she was seeing, as Rainbow Dash muttered something.
Help me.
Muttered Rainbow Dash, as she collapsed to the ground.
Rainbow Dash!
Yelled Applejack, rushing to Rainbow Dash's aid. She watched as Rainbow Dash's mouth started to leak a massive amount of blood, and the Pegasus grew weaker with each passing second. Applejack was more scared than ever before, as she felt tears escape her eyes.
Somebody help! Stay with me, Rainbow! Stay with me!
She yelled, attempting to keep Rainbow Dash conscious. At Ponyville Hospital, Applejack sat in the hall just outside of Rainbow Dash's room, awaiting the results of the tests that were ran on the Pegasus. Applejack had not decided to tell the others yet, until Rainbow Dash's condition was determined to be severe or mild. It had to be severe, though. Rainbow was crying blood drops and was throwing up blood. Not your common flu or cold. Applejack was still traumatized at the sight of Rainbow Dash's condition.
Okay.
From out of Rainbow Dash's room, Nurse Redheart stepped out of the room, closing the door behind her. Once the door was shut, she approached Applejack with a clipboard in her hoof.
Well?
Asked Applejack.
After running multiple tests on her, the results all came back negative. Nothing was found in her blood tests, and her oxygen and blood pressure level is normal. Sorry to say, but we can't find anything wrong with her.
Nurse
So the
Redheart
best thing we can do is give her some
escape the
medication
Rainbow
for the
Factory.
nausea.
Assured Nurse Redheart.
Y'all can't be serious! She was crying blood, she was vomiting blood, something is wrong with her, and as doctors, y'all should be able to fix her!
Exclaimed Applejack.
I'm sorry, but there's nothing we can do. My suggestion is for your friend to get lots of rest, and if her condition worsens, take her to Camelot. I'm sure she can find some professional help there. For now, have your friend take these.
Nurse Redheart held out her hoof, holding a small bottle of nausea medication. Applejack took the small bottle and placed it under her hat.
I wish there was more we could do, but best of luck to you and your friend.
Said Nurse Redheart as she turned away and walked off. Applejack stood from the bench and clenched her hoof.
I'm not gonna let Rainbow suffer. I'm sure Twilight can figure something out in her collection of books. Just gotta stay positive and not jump to conclusions.
She's
stated.
dying, Applejack. She's dying.
She took a seat again, waiting for a doctor to come and discharge Rainbow. In her heart, she struggled to figure out what could be wrong with Rainbow, but nothing came in the silent hall. Once Rainbow Dash had been discharged from the hospital, Applejack wasted no time in taking the suffering Pegasus to Twilight's castle, where she hoped Twilight could find out what the cause was. To prevent any other pony from getting sick, Twilight cast a spell on Rainbow, so she was enclosed in a bubble of magic, much like what Cadence had done when they had to take care of a not-so-sick Discord. Twilight scrambled through the countless books she had on severe illnesses, focusing on looking for
Do you think
keywords.
this would be in one
The
of her
Alicorn
books?
was surprised when Applejack had mentioned Rainbow crying blood. That's usually something you'd only hear or see in a horror story. For it to really be happening frightened Twilight.
A whole story? What's this
Continued
then?
to flip through every book, page after page, only to find nothing on an illness like Rainbow's. There were similar illnesses that involved severe nausea where the victim of the illness vomited blood, but nothing came up on the victim crying blood. The more time that passed, the worse Rainbow's condition became. She was coughing horribly, and all that came out of the cough was blood. Rainbow looked weak, and her blue coat and rainbow mane had fallen to pale colors. Every pony was starting to assume the worst, but what could possibly have caused this?
Around
Out of her
cookies?
frustration, Twilight tossed aside her last book on severe illnesses.
I can't find anything! I've looked through every single book I have and nothing comes up on a pony crying blood!
Said Twilight harshly. The room fell to silence for a moment, until it was interrupted by the sound of Rainbow coughing again, and the sound of blood splatter against the dome of magic following it. The Pegasus was on her final lifeline, and Rainbow knew it. Applejack felt guilt come over her. Looking at her suffering friend, she suddenly remembered something that could possibly have something to do with Rainbow Dash's sickness.
What was
With no
it?
further options, she had nothing to lose, except her friend, so she spoke out.
I actually have an idea of what could have caused this.
Said
What?
Applejack in a low tone.
What is it?
Asked Twilight.
Well, Rainbow was doing her community service and something kept bothering her in the barn. Some sort of smell.
Replied Applejack, feeling tears form in her eyes. Twilight looked at Applejack with a confused look.
A smell?
Said Twilight. Applejack nodded her head as a response.
Yes, I smell.
What kind of smell?
Asked Twilight.
I don't know.
A new car,
I thought
a
she
new
was trying to get out
car
of
smell.
working, so I didn't ask her about the smell.
Replied Applejack, her voice full of sadness. Twilight could see that Applejack was troubled, and she didn't want to question Rainbow Dash due to her current condition.
Well, there's only one way to find out, I suppose.
Applejack knew what Twilight meant, but deep down, she was afraid to go back. The sight of Rainbow crying blood would forever haunt her memories as long as she lived. But she knew that Twilight was right. It might be too late for Rainbow, but it wasn't too late to prevent another death. So she
How?
nodded her head.
How you did? You
Spike
did
can watch Rainbow while we're gone. As long as the spell holds out, he should be fine. Let's just hope that Rainbow's condition improves by the time we get back. Otherwise,
I hope so
I'm
too.
afraid we might have to accept the truth.
Assured Twilight. Applejack agreed, as her along with Twilight trotted out of the room, not hearing Rainbow's warning.
Don't go. It's not safe.
Back at the barn, Twilight and Applejack arrived, approaching the area with caution. It didn't take less than a second of stepping into the barn for the smell to hit both of them. It had grown stronger since Rainbow Dash's sudden sickness, and to suppress the smell, both of them covered their nostrils.
What is that smell?
What is that
It
smell?
smells like some pony's mane being burned.
Exclaimed
Ugh.
Twilight. The smell was terrible, causing an immediate headache to build up in both of their heads. It was unbearable, causing both of the mares to immediately back out of the barn, attempting to breathe in as much fresh air as possible. One question still remained though. Where was the smell coming from? Seeing that she had failed her friend once, Applejack took the risk of finding the source.
I'll go. It's the least I can do for Rainbow Dash.
stated Applejack.
Just be careful.
Concluded
Be careful.
Twilight.
Yeah, be careful,
I
please.
will, Sugar Cube.
Replied Applejack, stepping back into the barn. She kept her nose covered, approaching the area where Rainbow Dash was when the events of the day went downhill. Applejack's head pounded as she came to a stop, noticing that the smell had become much stronger. The source was near, so she quickly looked around, trying to find the source of the smell.
What was it? What was it?
Her eyes had started to water, making it hard to focus. For her friend, she was going to find the source. All that was in the area was hay, so the source had to be coming from somewhere she wouldn't expect. Out of the corner of her eye, she spotted some of the Joe Cookie rainbow fillings smothered on the ground, next to the large number of boxes of the other Joe Cookies.
Could that be?
She stuck her nostrils down toward the rainbow filling and took one sniff. Immediately, the smell had caused her nose to burn and her stomach to turn. The source was the Joe Cookie filling. But why would such a harmless thing cause some pony to get deathly ill? And what was causing the foul odor? She didn't waste no time in trotting out of the barn and took in heavy breaths of fresh air.
Did you find the source?
Asked Twilight.
What's...
Applejack
It's the sauce
raised her
making
head.
the sauce.
It's the rainbow filling from the Joe Cookies. I don't know what it is, but there's something in that rainbow filling that makes ponies sicker than a desert on a harvest moon.
She confirmed.
That's good. Now we know the cause, so all we need to do is dispose of the Joe Cookies.
Is it
I'm
that simple?
afraid it's not that easy, Twi. Ponyville is littered with those cookies, and unless some pony has a cookie magnet, we're in trouble.
Replied Applejack.
Cookie man.
Twilight's eyes widened as she looked up at Applejack, noticing blood starting to leak from her eye sockets. Her entire body shivered as she backed away.
Twi, are you okay?
Asked Applejack, following an unexpected cough. Tears started to fill Twilight's eyes, knowing her friend had come down with the same sickness as Rainbow Dash. She didn't want to see Applejack suffer a slow and painful death, so she decided to put her friend out of her misery.
I'm sorry. Please forgive me for this.
Said Twilight in a low voice. Twilight shot a powerful beam of magic from her horn, hitting Applejack and throwing her against a nearby apple tree. The impact had managed to break Applejack's spine along with countless other bones. Twilight felt horrible as she approached her friend. Applejack was bleeding horribly against the tree as she saw Twilight approach closer.
Twilight, wait, please!
She pleaded, coughing out massive amounts of blood. Twilight did not hold back this time and charged a stronger mass of magic, firing it directly at her friend. Applejack didn't speak or breathe as she died seconds after impact with Twilight's blast. The farm pony was gone and free from dying a horrible death. Twilight fell to her knees and cried massively. She felt horrible. She had just killed her friend, one of the first friends she made when she came to Ponyville. Despite her killing a friend, she couldn't let Applejack die in vain. Ponyville was in deep peril, and even though she felt it was already too late, she pressed onward into Ponyville.
Please let there still be time.
She pleaded as she trotted toward Ponyville.
It looks like it's no chance.
Along the way to
Surely
Ponyville,
every pony should
the
be
worst had
covered by
become
now.
obvious. She spotted countless ponies on the sides of the street, each deathly ill and in a pile of their own blood. How could something like this happen to Ponyville, a place of happiness and friendship? The one place you would never expect something like this to happen. It dawned upon Twilight. It was already too late. The smell had plagued Ponyville, and every pony had become infected. It became obvious as Twilight came to Ponyville Center, where she saw countless ponies struggling to stand. All of them were as pale as a ghost, and were coughing
sounds
massively.
like
From among
radiation
these ponies,
actually.
she saw Fluttershy and Rarity, each with tear streams of blood
Yeah,
down their
it's definitely
faces.
like radiation sickness.
Fluttershy, a Pegasus of pure kindness infected with the ruthless disease. Rarity, a unicorn of fashion and generosity. doomed to a slow and horrid death.
Oh dear.
Twilight didn't know if she could handle killing another friend, but at the same time, she didn't want to see her friend suffer. She was unsure of what to do, until she heard Fluttershy speak out as loud as her weak voice could manage.
Twilight, please, make the pain go away.
Pleaded Fluttershy, her voice full of sadness and pain. That was a plea for death that she couldn't turn down. Fluttershy was her friend, and as a true friend, she was not going to let the kind-hearted Pegasus suffer. Twilight approached Fluttershy and placed her hoof against the neck of the tender Pegasus. She couldn't watch, so Twilight closed her eyes and pressurized her hoof downward until she heard the neck of the Pegasus snap. That was one sound that Twilight would never forget. Tears escaped Twilight's eyes, waiting for Rarity to ask the same request. But until Twilight opened her eyes, she didn't realize that Rarity was already dead. The unicorn's neck had been snapped by some pony, and it didn't even take a second for Twilight to figure out that Fluttershy had put Rarity out of her misery. That was 3 of her friends, dead. She had no idea what to do now. Go back to the castle, look for Pinkie, try to find a cure? If she went back to the castle, she would only be confronted with a dead Rainbow Dash and a progressing Spike. There was no need to go looking for a lost cause. If every pony was affected, not even Pinkie Pie, an Earth pony, able to break the laws of physics, could escape an epidemic. Even if she was gone from Ponyville, it would eventually spread. Lastly, she was already infected, so a cure would not matter. Her only hope was that this entire thing was just a terrible dream, and that she would wake up any second.
It's not a
She
dream.
blinked multiple times.
After
about the 3rd try,
telling the truth
it
here.
became obvious that this was no dream.
No,
This was real.
it was real, yeah.
Hope was gone.
Gone.
28 days later, population of Ponyville, 1.
It sounds like a
The once populated Ponyville
nuclear
is now a
explosion.
land of
That's what
rotting
sounds
corpses,
after
with
you
only
get
the
after
smell of the
nuclear
Joe Cookie
explosion.
feeling being present within the air. All business is dead. All ponies are dead. All except one. Princess Twilight Sparkle. 28 days have passed since she was infected, and slowly the effects have taken hold. But she still lives among the many ponies she once knew as her friends. Her strength weakens. Her body deteriorates. Her grip on reality slips. A noise in the distance erupts among the quiet town. The sound of numerous bones shattering and blood leaking from open wounds. A distant heartbeat fades to nothing as the town falls to a pure dead silence. Her torture ends as a new sound fills the air. Pecks from the vultures that have circled the town for weeks. It's done. Population of Ponyville, 0.
Well, basically Twilight died at the end after 28 days then. Oh my god. Tonight, I had that cough in it. Oh, I've got no drink enough. Well, yeah, it's basically like the sickness after coming to midway in the story reminds me of radiation sickness, and it's like after the sound, the wind sound reminds me of after a nuclear explosion. Everything's been destroyed, and you got that eerie wind coming in. If you ever watch something like horror stories or something, you hear the wind, you know, basically everyone's dead. Or
Come on!
I'm very sorry, Sweetie Belle. You're dead as well. You know that. fucking sorry, YouTube, sorry. And Applejack's actually fell down on the floor. Didn't see you fall. You're dead. You're both dead. You're all dead actually. Do you like dying? Yeah, that was a good story by Sparrow. I was very close to coughing at the beginning, and I kept it in. It's only because I did eat a peanut butter sandwich. I put the peanut butter in my mouth. Wow. Happy. What's the name of the fucking thing called?
0.
Nightmare Nights.
Oh, come on!
Happy Heartswarming. Fuck's sake. Nightmare Nights, thank you. Happy Nightmare Happy Nightmare Nights, every pony. And don't get nightmares, especially from this story. Listen at your own risk. And if you end up coughing, who knows? Did you eat a cookie?